questions you may have.
Today, so he told us how beautiful of a day it was. So
Who's that?
Matt did earlier.
Yeah. It's funny when the head coach is under the weather, everybody has to know about it. If everybody else is under the weather, we just can't talk about it. Is that an SMU shirt you got on? All right. I like it. Fair catch, free hit. Yep. You have a question about it, or it was just everybody saw it? I didn't see it live. We were working it, but I got texts from about former players, current players, players on other teams, and so because everyone practices it, mostly through training camp. Everyone puts it in, and then you hit it somewhere during the season as one of the situational things that could possibly come up. And obviously they were prepared for it and came up, and Dicker the kicker had a hell of a kick. So. Actually, the closest we came, and you might remember, but we were in Dallas and we were playing Green Bay in the playoffs in 16. They punted late right before the half, and Beasley Fair caught the ball. We thought we could get ourselves in position, but I think it would have been a 73-yarder, and we just didn't feel like it was in our wheelhouse and didn't take the shot at it. So there's a lot of things that go on with it. The further back you are, obviously the ball's on the ground. It's different than being on a tee, and those guys would rather take their normal field goal approach to do the kick. So a bunch of guys work on, our guy works on, if it is going to be a 70-yard kick, it would look like a full kickoff approach, but it's a little bit more problematic when the ball's on the ground, not on a tee. So, but kudos to them, they did a great job with it.
So we asked you last week about the Cowboys game and the punt that got blocked and then went across. So when these types of things happen, I know you work on them from time to time, but does it serve as an opportunity to go over it again with the guys each time something out of the ordinary happens, or not really?
Yeah, again, I know you asked that last week, and you talked about the reel. Does this go on the reel? And Connor does a great job on Fridays with all the different situations come up around the league. What happened last week? I think there was 2 or 3 guys that dropped the ball before they crossed the goal line, right? So that's obviously going to make the reel. And then we always make a reel in the kicking game as well. I'm sure offensively and defensively, those guys make reels of things that happen to other teams in last week's games, and then we go over them usually on Friday. But for us, we do different phases each day, and so the things that happen in those phases, we'd put them usually on the end of the tape, and we'd hit those 2 or 3 things with the guys. Because like we said, I think last week, everyone goes through things, right, situations in games. So we're trying to not only learn from the screw-ups that we have, but we're trying to learn from everyone else's mistakes or the good things that they do as well. So.
What do you like about Edgerrin Cooper on teams, and to do everything he did on defense, and then to also, I know he didn't have 3 tackles technically, but the one
3 tackles technically.
So
you want to come watch your film? Come to my office. He should have had 4. He had a missed tackle. So should have had 4 on kickoff.
Oh, so the one where he hits him with one hand, then Eric Wilson comes in and...
No. That's his tackle. Eric gets an assist. He gets a cleanup. I'll grade the tackles. You can come look at them. You do whatever the hell it is you're doing on that paper right there.
Cooper gave you on teams on Sunday.
Well, it was good to have him back because he was second in tackles going into it, and now he's first in tackles. Zane moved to number 2. So, everyone likes everything about Edgerrin. I call him Frosty. That's kind of his nickname. You can ask him if he wants to tell you why. But, he's a ball magnet. That's the best thing about him that I can say. Athletically, he does things that you really can't teach, and we're just trying to put him in position in the kicking game to see where he can help us make a play. I think a few weeks ago he played out there at the Flyer for us on the left side before he got his knick-knack, and we're glad to have him back.
What are the characteristics of a Darren Rizzi special teams?
They've always been they're a rush first team on punt, and so they have a lot of different looks to prepare for. They bring the corners. We call them corner cats, and he's always had a really good return guy. Last year they hit us for a touchdown in last year's game. So he's been at it a long time. His players play with a lot of energy and a great zeal. They're complicated in their punt rushes, and he's been a good protection team, over time. And now he's got, a little familiar with what he's going through. You got to wear an extra hat, and I think that the whole team is playing really well. But certainly the special teams is in general for us, they're a fast physical unit. Now he's lost a couple guys that have been some really good players, the return guy and some of those guys. But some of the guys have come back and played for him that weren't playing earlier are still playing well. They've been in every game. You know, so it's been a difficult team to prepare for.
That punt formation, do they use that regularly with the three
They
guys?
do it. They're almost doing it about half the time right now, close to half the time. So it's a little bit of a college shield or some form of spread punt to some degree. So again, we have to prepare for that. They did it to us last year. They jumped in it last year as well when they came here. So.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was just going to ask you what, issues that presents.
Well, it's a new formation that you have to prepare for, right? No different. The standard formation everyone prepares for every week, but when you have a team that jumps out into multiple formations and puts flyers on one side or the other, or puts wings way back off the ball, or puts the formation guard over or tackle over, you just have to prepare how to line up for it. You got to figure out who the center is and how you're going to line up, and then where the eligibles go. Who are the eligible players.
Rich, I can't remember a time where Daniel hit one like he did in that third. It's so unusual that he has one like he had in the third quarter. What happened?
Yeah, I think the Ram game, if you look at your memory back a little bit, he had that, I think he had a 28-yarder out of there, So I think he overthought a little bit of the game. I think it was a better night than he thought it was going to be wind-wise, and felt like he could go a little bit better directionally one way over the other and just push his drop a little bit inside. Certainly wasn't the game he wanted. Now the one punt, that we downed on the 4 versus a 9-man front. I don't know if you guys saw the returner come over and they bring the extra guy off the edge, and he did a great job of getting the ball out of his hand and a great job of placing it down there, giving us a chance to make a play. I know he'd like to have those other ones back. Just thought his drop was a little bit off, and I think a little bit about he overthought some of the things he was trying to do directionally, but I'm expecting him to come back and play well.
He's been so good.
Yes, again, we talked about him, I think, last week. Maybe I'll stop talking about him, so. But he's been on the, I talk about some guys are on the roller coaster, they're on that thing clicks and clicks and clicks till it gets to the top and then shoo, right, it takes off. Well, he's still clicking on the roller coaster. I don't think he's gotten to where he's going to play. He's played his great game, his best game yet, and so I think he's got a lot of room for growth. He had a really good practice yesterday in the snow. Really wasn't much wind, but there was a lot of other distractions going on, so I'm expecting him to play well this week.
In addition to Waylon, Bo, Rochelle, Valentine as the Flyers, what about their contributions to that coverage team this season?
Obviously, it's kind of like when you play defense, rush and coverage go together. Well, for us, the protection and then obviously the punt and now the coverage of those two outside guys, especially when we're seeing a lot of 8-man fronts. Seattle kind of played us a little bit of a 7 and a hybrid 6. They had that 7th guy in the box and bounced out. So I think that had a little bit to do with him trying to go away from the doubles to some degree and, in the game. But I think obviously Bo's been, he's been outstanding now for 2 years, and we get contribution every time Scooter's up, every time Double Deuce is up, he plays well for us. And so we're hoping to have him up again this week. And then Rochelle's coming off, CB's coming off a little bit of a knick-knack, and hopefully he'll be full speed this week as well. But what they do on the outside, really helps us stay a little bit longer in protection, knowing that those guys can win on the outside.
You guys good?
Frosty, Body Beautiful, is this something that you like to do with all your guys? Or?
It makes it easier for me to remember who the hell they are, instead of calling them 56 and 45 and stuff like that.
In all seriousness, Rogers years ago used to talk about how giving guys nicknames was one small way that you created some connectivity with guys. Do you believe that?
Great comment, Yeah, great comment. I just think, again, especially early, when guys first get here, there's so many guys, right? You have 90 guys on your roster, and sometimes if they remind you of someone else or something comes up that they do and you give them a nickname, it kind of helps you maybe build a relationship with them, to Aaron's point, a little bit. Frosty's, because anyway, it's interesting. But yeah, I do think that, and I've kind of done that, my whole career, just kind of somebody reminds you of somebody else, and they kind of give them a nickname. It helps you build, I think, like I said, build a relationship with them. Okay.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, guys.
It's like being a kid on that snow yesterday. All right, let's go.
Your attention, please.
Oh, boy.
The building emergency condition has been cleared.
There was an emergency?
No, there was an emergency.
Your attention, please. The building emergency condition has been cleared.
That's more important than my press conference. If we got to go, we got to go. Does that mean I'm done?
The building emergency condition has been cleared.
It's over. That's good.
It's all right. We would have stayed through it. All right, let's roll.
What's the challenge with their offense with, it's a new quarterback, new running back. It's a lot of things maybe you don't see, a lot of guys you haven't seen over the course of the season.
Yeah, I mean, depending on who plays quarterback, if it's Rattler or somebody else, there's film on him. There's film on all three. You kind of watch the last few games and what they've done, and you watch early in the season. You try to compare and see what's different, right? I think they've got multiple running backs who are more than capable of playing well, and their O-line is healthy and playing well. I know they're banged up at the wide receiver position. I think they have really good tight ends, but you study what you can, and you go out and you play.
Luke Musgrave apparently was running scout team. So you've got to see Luke. I'm not sure, you're probably not studying him. What have you thought of 88 going up against your defense?
No, it's good to see him back. Just good to have him back out there. We got to see quite a bit of him in training camp, and we know what he's capable of doing and what he brings to the offense. So to see him kind of getting ready to go, it's exciting. And anytime you get a player like that giving us a look, it's very helpful.
Jeff, what have you thought of how your defensive front guys have dropped back, when you've asked them to drop back into coverage? What's your expectation there? They're obviously not defensive backs, to cover an area, but what have you thought about that and how that's worked for you?
When we dropped some of the guys into zones? Yeah, I think they've done a great job. I mean, we've had a very, very high success rate on those calls, and I think they're a huge part of it. Right, and we're not asking them to play man. We're not asking them to, run with players down the field. We're just asking them to get to a spot, read the quarterback, and play ball. And, they're athletic enough to do it. They've embraced it. You don't want to do it all the time, but when you give a D lineman a couple of chances to do that, they genuinely like to do it because they want to maybe have an interception or get their hands on a football. So they've embraced it, and they've done a really good job. It's been part of the reason why it has been successful. But we're not asking them to do very much and run with a player down the field or cover a wide out or a tight end. It's more just getting to a spot and reading off the quarterback and playing ball.
You might have talked about this back in March or whenever you were discussing your hires, but what made you want to hire Campanelli on your staff? Because according to my very brief research, you guys haven't worked together before this.
No, we've never worked together, but I feel like I've known him. I've probably known him for, over 15 years. From the same area, and I think I mentioned this before with him. When I was a younger coach, even coaching Division III and 1AA, he was at a high school and I used to go to it all the time, and we just kind of hit it off and we'd hang out. I'd go to the school, we'd hang out, we'd meet up after and just talk football, draw plays. And then I got to Pitt. He came and visited me when I was at Pitt, and we continued to have a really good friendship and relationship. And a lot of that started with the respect I had for him and how hard he worked. And, I tried to get him into college football, and that worked out. And we've just become really close. I have a huge amount of respect for him as a coach, his knowledge, how hard he coaches, his intensity, but more importantly as a person. He's an extremely loyal friend. He always has been. He's a guy that no matter where I've been, if I picked up the phone and needed anything, I know he'd be right there. And when Matt first called me, he was one of my first phone calls. And once we decided to go in this direction, and he had a bunch of opportunities to go elsewhere, and we've been kind of waiting to do this for a while. It's actually funny that you brought that up, because we were texting. We were on two separate planes on the way home from the last game, and we were texting back and forth. And he just wrote me a text back like, "How cool is this? This is what we always talked about doing." So it's actually really neat to finally get a chance to coach with him, because I hadn't before, but I feel like I have. We just hadn't. So, but what a great job he's done with the linebackers, him and Sean Duggan, with those young guys. And obviously it's shown. I thought Quay, before he got injured, was playing really, really good football. I mean, really good. And then obviously the other guys for sure.
was talking to McDuffie today about how Campanelli will show boxing clips and
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali clips. He said that happened at Boston College too. What do you see as the purpose of that, and is that to the full team once a week? What is kind of the whole story behind that?
He's a big boxing guy. You can ask the linebackers to get more into detail about it, but when he does do his ball presentation in front, it usually finishes with a fight. But he's a big boxing guy, yeah. Everything has to do with boxing with him. He's a historian when it comes to boxing as well.
In the previous instances, when Eric Wilson has had to fill in at the Mike linebacker role, what stood out about him taking on that role and then how he performed in it?
Yeah, I think he performed really well. He did it at Indy, he did it at Houston, he did it at Jacksonville. And, you know, at that position, there's a lot that goes into it. One, he's got to get the call from me. He's got to give that to everybody. He's got to make checks up front. He's got to make checks behind him. You know, he's got to calm everything down. He's got to get certain guys lined up. Eric's a really smart player. You know, we cross-train all those guys. So Eric's played Sam, Mike, and Will. And when you got to get that green dot halfway through a game, that's not easy. And when you have to tell everybody else what they're doing and then go out and execute your job, I mean, I know that might not seem hard, but that's not easy. Some of our calls can be kind of lengthy. So for him to make a tackle, get up, shake off whatever just happened, gather everybody up, tell everybody the call, hear my check, here's something else I might tell him what I think is coming, right, to tell this guy or that guy, and then line up and make a close call and get us in. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, and I think he's a veteran guy who brings a calmness, and I think he's had success doing that. So we'll see where Quay's at, and then we'll figure out who will be in that position.
What was the most impressive thing about Cooper? Obviously, he didn't play for the last 3 games and comes out and has a whole bunch of game-changing plays for you.
I mean, there was a lot that was impressive about him. One, he hadn't practiced very much. And then, I mean, he just makes a lot of splash plays. I mean, you see how fast he is. He's a great tackler. He's a great blitzer. He should have had 2 interceptions in the game. I mean, he should have had the one when they were backed up, and he'll tell you that, so I'm not knocking him at all. His ability to close. I mean, there was a screen that was thrown that he was like 8 yards away from it, and by the time the guy caught the ball, he was right there. He can eat up the grass really fast. And sometimes he might not be in the right position, but he has that ability to make up for it. So the more he learns and the better he gets, he's going to get better and better and better. And he's really matured and developed. Again, I think Camp and Sean Duggan have done a really good job with him. We just need him to stay healthy so he can practice and then play more and more. I mean, we would have played him more last week, but he was coming off a soft tissue injury, so we didn't want to re-injure him. But he obviously played really well. He's been the NFC Player of the Week twice now. So.
You talk about the receiver screen. You talk about him closing gaps facing the screen.
Yeah, it was that and the running back screen. I mean, he did it again today in practice. I mean, the guy's just got the ability to eat up grass and run, you know. But the more he practices and can stay healthy, he's just a guy you want on the field.
Jeff, I don't know how many guys get a chance at an interception right after they nearly had one.
Talking about CV?
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's rare.
Right, but to come back and make the play the next time, you know, I'm sure you would want to make the first one, but what's that say about him, you think?
I mean, just the resiliency. And the cool thing about CV was, and I think Matt might have mentioned this because we made him the G of the week, the way he practiced last week, I mean, I knew he was going to play well. And that's not like me just blowing smoke. Like, if you watched him practice last week, the way he pressed, the way he covered, he had multiple interceptions, he had multiple PBUs. And then when you go see him do it in the game, and it's what I said to him right after the game. Obviously I congratulated him, but that's how he practiced. And when you do that, that's usually happens on game day, right? The first one, we were in a cover 2, and X did a great job disguising it, and Gino threw a ball that he probably wishes he had back because he shouldn't have thrown it. And CV kind of went up, and he should have had that one. The other one, he was in man on another guy and fell off his man and made the play, which was an incredible, incredible play. So he made a harder one than he would have the first time. But just the resiliency and how he's played all year. He's another guy that he's been in and out of practice. He's had injuries. He wasn't here for a lot of the training camp. And now he's kind of getting in the groove, and he's playing really well. And I would expect that from him going forward.
Did you say G of the week?
Yeah, he was the G of the week. You got to ask Matt about that because I don't want to give away any of his secrets. So, but he was. So next time you talk to Matt, make sure you ask him what the G of the week is. Or you can ask Steno. Maybe Steno's been here longer than me, so you should open up your press conference and say, hey, Steno, what's the G of the week? He'll probably tell you. I just don't know if I'm supposed to because I'm still like the new guy. So ask Steno to do that. He'll do it. I won't tell him anything. Usually I make stuff up when I see him anyway. Is that an SMU shirt? Are you an SMU fan?
It just was
He
up to the
wears a
top.
different college sweatshirt. I
He
thought.
wears it for conversation pieces.
I see it started a conversation right now. We played him last year in the bowl game. Yeah.
Article, yeah.
Yep. We got him in the bowl game last year, my last game there. Yeah. So I like SMU too. We won by, I think, 14 points. It was a good game. Kind of like Syracuse. All right, back to real questions.
Do you ever see Cooper's position being middle linebacker? I mean, could you see that down the road? That being
Sure. Why best? What makes the Mike different than the Will? He has an opportunity to make a ton of plays at the Will. If we felt like Mike was better suited, sure, he could do it. In time, yeah, I absolutely think that he could. I think he's a really good Will linebacker. I think he could be a great Sam linebacker too. So I think he could be a great Sam, Mike, or Will. The thing you got to be really careful of right now as a young guy who's missed a lot of practice is trying to get him to learn too much because he just hasn't had the reps at 1, let alone 2. Like he's played some Sam for us, and now he's really playing a lot of Will. So you just got to be careful overloading him, or he won't be able to go out there. And it's not like it's not as easy as you think, right? It's not like I'm going to go out and play corner and then I'm going to go play. There's more that goes into switching from that position.
2 more, please.
I don't want to make this into a long answer, but
I can try to make it short.
could you thumbnail through what you're looking for from each of those 3 spots?
Oh, no, that would take me. We can sit down when the season's over and we can do a whole story on it. I wouldn't even know where to be. I'd give you, knowing myself, we'd be here for like another half hour.
Is that a promise that you'll sit down with all of us and help us understand your defense better? Because we've been promised that before and it never
I have
happened.
no problem if they now, I don't know that you got to ask. If they tell me that, I got no problem. I'd be happy after the season to sit down and fill you in on the evolution of our defense this year, which has certainly evolved.
And that's what actually, not the off-season version of it, the current version.
Sure.
I feel like, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and I'm definitely not the smartest guy in the room, and I assumed that switching to a 4-3 where you were more aggressive and was more simple than some of the things that they tried to do last year, the transition wouldn't be that difficult. But when you transition, I'm learning it doesn't matter, it's still difficult. So where do you think you are in that transition? I know you're never satisfied, you always talk about how you could be better, but where do you think you are and where do you think you can still get in the last 3 games and into the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a good spot. I do. I think where we're at right now is our guys understand what they're doing, and they're playing really fast, and they're playing really hard, and they're starting to make a lot of plays. And you can see it. Whether I sit up in the booth or whether I put on the tape, they're playing fast, and they're physical, and they're playing hard. So what that tells me, they know what they're doing. So therefore, I think we're in a good spot. And I give the coaches credit, and I give the players credit for getting to that point, because you could feel it. Like if you turn on week 1 to now, it's a totally different speed and confidence, right? I think we need to be more consistent. And I think we have been in certain games. I think last week was a great example of that. But we need to be consistent as we finish the season, and we need to continue to take the steps to do that. There can't be lapses, and there can't be mistakes if we're going to try to do what we think we can do. But I think the guys are starting to feel like they can, and that is the most important thing to me. There's a confidence in that room right now, and that is so important, where when they're playing, they're not thinking as much, and they're just doing it, and they're communicating, and they're starting to have fun doing it. And you can see that in practice too.
So can I follow up real quick?
You go ahead.
So were there some mileposts on that? Like, we gave each other kind of some shit about the Bears game, right? But you guys, Detroit's got a really good offense, but there were still some really good moments in that game. So have there been some mileposts on the journey to this point that you saw okay, now this is starting to click.
Yeah, that's a great question. And truthfully, I mean, I just don't have any time to sit back and really reflect on it. And then when you ask, I start to while I'm up here. And you bring up the Bears game, and yeah, I mean, we didn't finish in that game, but we were in the spots, we were closer, and we were in the spots we were supposed to be. Then we played a really good game. And if you look at the Lions game, we did a lot of good things in the Lions game. The result didn't show, but the process was still right. And we were still getting better in that game. I told you we did some really good things in the run game. We did some really good things in the pass game. We couldn't get off the field in certain situations, right? And then you piece it together last week where we did finish when we were in those positions, and we did make the plays when we were in those situations, and we did get off the field on the third downs, right? And we did that. And now it's about consistency because we showed that we can do it against a good team, against several good teams, right? I mean, this whole season, and you know, there's a starting point to where we started and what we thought we could be. And what I've learned over the course of the year, and I've said this to you, my job wasn't to come in here and put down a playbook and say, this is what we're running. Initially, I had to do that because I'm just going to make stuff up, right? But then our job as coaches was to figure out who do we have, what can they do, and we've evolved through the year to give these guys we currently have the best opportunities to succeed. And along the way, we've had to change some stuff, which you guys have seen as you've watched the tape. Right? We've had to get creative in some areas, and we've had to change stuff up in some areas. It's the same thing when players get injured. So you have to be able to adapt and adjust, and I think when we're done with this whole season, hopefully we'll continue to play our best game the last week with that consistency. And then I think the beautiful thing is you're going to look at it, take a deep breath, really reflect, and then you're going to piece it all together, and it's just going to be that much better because we know who we are. So I give the players a ton of credit for the way they've adjusted, and in week whatever we are right now, how they're playing. And again, it's not perfect. And there's some mistakes that we have got to fix if we're going to win and win and win. But I cannot be more grateful to how the players have bought in.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Good luck, SMU.
We were told to ask you what the G of the week is.
G of the week. Yeah, it's a team award given out every week by Coach LaFleur, just for a guy who exemplifies what it means to be a Green Bay Packer. I'll leave it at that. But a lot of different reasons you could win it.
Valentine this week, Jeff said.
Yeah, probably. Made some plays. I can't remember. It's like you move on. But yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
You guys vote on it, or does Matt just choose?
No, we have nominees, but he makes the decision. Yeah.
Matt was saying that Luke could potentially play on Monday. What have you thought? I Sounds like this is his first day taking team reps.
Yep. Yeah, we got him out there in team, and he looked good. He was running around. Kind of the big thing is just to see how he can do blocking and change of direction and things like that. But his linear speed looked good. He made some plays down the field running. So, yeah, we'll see. It's just a day-to-day thing, and, we'll see if we can get him out there on Monday.
You don't have any, there's no shortage of guys who can play on this offense, but what would it do for this group to get him back out there?
Yeah, it's just another vertical threat, obviously another vertical threat at a different position that I think can really stretch the field. Obviously blocking, he does a good job blocking at the point of attack, so just another weapon you can use in the run game too on the blocking surface. So, yeah, it'll be great to get him back and just get him going again.
You guys have spent over the last 2 years, probably played close to 2,000 offensive snaps the last 2 seasons. Any guess at how many you've had Kraft and Musgrave on the field at the same time for?
A percentage? A percentage of our snaps where they're both on the field or they're both playing in the same game?
No, on the field, like you've used them together.
I'd say, I don't know, 15?
It's 125 snaps out of 2,000, so that's probably about, I don't know, I'm bad at that. But anyway, my point is we haven't seen it
Yeah,
very
not
much.
a lot,
Do
yeah.
you even know what,
No,
dynamic it could be?
Not yet, no, I don't think so. I mean, you kind of have a plan, but you got to see how it unfolds. And the problem is you always make plans and then, injuries pop up or whatever happens. But yeah, it'll be great to get those guys out there again together. I think they're both very talented players. And they both have different skill sets, which is cool. But they're both tough kids that, you can use in the run and the pass game. So it's fun to have those guys.
He didn't really set you up for success.
That was bad. Bad delivery.
6.25%.
Okay.
In 2000 was
Way
just-
off, that's way off.
What did you see from the Saints last week? I mean, they had 8 sacks against the Washington.
Yeah.
And I know some of it's Daniels running around, but what did you see from them?
I mean, their D-line's good. They have Granderson, they got Cam Jordan, they got Saunders in the middle. Like, they do a really good job, and they're physical and big. Their blitz packages, their third downs, they got multiple different packages they use. They do a good job with Demario Davis, rushing and picking and all that stuff. So they've done a good job all year just creating pressure on the quarterback, and they've done that for years. That's a problem. Every time you play the Saints, you know what you're in for, but they do a really good job getting after the quarterback.
Is it similar to before Dennis Allen?
Yeah, they still employ some of the same deals, the same packages and their dime personnel where they bring the 2 linebackers up, rush 3, but then they do, the blitzing with them, with the DBs and the linebackers. So, yeah, it's a lot of the same stuff, and they're very effective with it.
Why do you think the run game has struggled in the second half of the last few games? Like, the first half, you guys would just go great guns, and it's still a struggle.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few factors. I think last game, it was just a matter of kind of getting drives going. But yeah, that's something we got to make sure when we go out there, we are still locked in. We don't have those negative plays, and we're doing a great job communicating. There's a few busts. But yeah, that's a focus thing. We just got to make sure we're focused for 4 quarters, for sure.
Steno, after the game on Sunday night, Matt was talking about having Romeo back, and in his answer, he talked about how hard it is to get all the guys the amount of touches you'd like. You guys always say it's a good problem to have. We've talked about it for the last 2 years, right? I get it. But when I asked him earlier if it was a stress for him, he basically said I was an idiot, which is fine. But is that I understand this is not like middle school basketball. Like, you're not trying to get everybody the same amount of playing time. But it would seem to me that when you get everybody involved, it also leads to success on the field. So I'm just wondering, after all this time now of having this much talent, how that process is during the week and how you think you guys handle it.
Usually, you start a game and you're like, all right, here are the opening plays we want. And you want to make sure, Christian's the number 1 read on X amount of plays. Jaden's the number 1 read. Josh is getting his touches. You know what I mean? You kind of go through it and you're like, all right, But as you know, like, the number one read doesn't always get the ball every time. And then in the second half, you can kind of like, for an example, Romeo, when we played the Texans, like, just got hot. You know, we were throwing up slants, and he was doing a great job. So then as the game progresses, you can be like, all right, this is working. This guy's on fire, whatever it is. Let's throw a bomb to Christian. He's making crazy plays, you know. So that's just kind of how the game unfolds. You can kind of dictate it as you go along. I don't know if that answered your question, but
It's probably just a bad question, but I'm just trying to understand, because like, yeah, the Rome thing earlier in the year, there was a time when we were asking Christian why he wasn't getting.
and a lot of it has to do with matchups too. Like there's an elite corner over here, and you know, like you don't. That's a bad matchup. Let's go somewhere else with the ball. Like stuff like that. You know, whatever the coverage is. There's a lot of different things that play into it, which is nice because you don't have to force it to one guy. You can say, all right, that's not good. Let's go over here, or whatever. You know, so it's a good problem to have, like you said. But as the game kind of unfolds, you can kind of try and dictate the hot hand, if you will.
Last thing, so is it, when it comes to communicating with the guys, is that unspoken? They all know that you're trying, or do you have to sometimes say things to say, look, it's not you, it's us. We're trying.
No, the good thing is like the guys, they're for the most part, like they get it. They're just teammate, like they're just team guys where you don't really have to explain it because they're not like that. You know, their egos are out of it and they just want to win, and they understand. They're not dumb, so it's a good problem to have in that sense too, where we just have a lot of selfless guys.
You guys good?
What do you think of what you've gotten out of Watson lately? I didn't want to keep.
It's been awesome. You know, his explosive plays have just really propelled this offense. You know, and it's been kind of weird because you're like, some of these games you're like, wow, we had this many yards and we only had 45 plays or 50, you know, whatever it is. But then you look at it and you're like, wow, Christian had, you know, 3 plays over 40 yards or whatever it is. So it's great. Anytime you can get those explosive plays lead to points. And, you know, that's next to protecting the football, it's getting explosives in the NFL is what leads to points. So, yeah, it's been awesome.
Is there a connection with those plays correlating to Josh Jacobs getting going early in the games and the
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone, like, once you get those plays, yeah, everyone kind of gets fed. So it's been really nice having Christian make those plays down the field, and I think it scares the defenses too. I'm sure he's one of the big concerns is his vertical stretch down the field and making those big plays, which opens up the underneath stuff for everyone else.
You guys good?
Cool.
Thanks,
Thanks
Doug.
guys. Happy holidays.